Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest webinar from the National Enabling Programme and the Police Digital Service. Thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to be focused on one of perhaps our biggest roles in communities and in society, is how we protect the most vulnerable in our communities, and particularly looking around the schools safeguarding. And I'm really pleased today we've been joined by Alan from Wiltshire Police, who will be taking us through what's going to be going through his presentation, what they've been doing in Wiltshire to work with partners, to work with the 365 platform that has been enabled by 365, to share content more effectively, to share information together and to collaborate more effectively. As normal, it's an interactive session, so please put your questions into the chat. We will bring them through as we go through this next half an hour. And remember, if you do have any questions you want to follow up, you can get in touch with us through nepinfo@transformation.police.uk. Let's start off with Alan, if you can share your screen. You started this work while you were working in the Youth Inclusion and Early Intervention team. So what is the aim of that team, and what was the work you were doing?
Thanks, Dave. Well, basically, the aim was to try to streamline the clunkiness of the old system that we had, which was known as First Point. And meeting with the NEP representatives in Wiltshire Police, we wanted to make sure that the way to talk to young people, the way to talk to children and young people, in particularly within schools, would become more relevant to the 21st century. And it would help my team deliver lessons easier and more effective. And it was making sure officers and even police staff that would go into schools to deliver would have the right toolkits and the preparation methods for when dealing with crime prevention messages, especially to an audience of potentially up to 300 children at one time. And that was basically it for us. And thanks to the input from NEP, we are starting to reap the benefits, which I'll discuss in a moment, of course.
Thanks. And obviously things changed during the pandemic, and so we can cover that as we go through this. Your screen is on screen, so let's take everybody through.
Brilliant, thank you, Dave, and welcome everyone to this presentation from myself. I'm Alan Aldersley-Byrne. I once was part of the Youth and Early Intervention team within Wiltshire Police. I still collaborate with that team, but today, I will be obviously talking about the safeguarding interventions that have been given the extra footfall thanks to the NEP test use case that I was part of. And originally, as I mentioned to Dave, we did have we had a system that was not cost effective, both in finance and in time constraints. But as I said, thanks to the NEP, our test case has now begun to reap the rewards and the benefits of the easy to use functions that were not there before. And this was both for the end user, being the student being educated, and indeed the facilitator, that would be either the police officer, the PCSO or police staff member. So thanks to M365 during the pandemic, as Dave rightly mentioned there, it was quite a task to overcome. But as you can see in the pictures there, we were able to trial brand new prevention methods to students on the road. And this example is our whole team at the time delivering an exploitation and a child sexual exploitation awareness session to Abbey Park School. That was 30 children listening and paying attention to what was being delivered while we were delivering it in a car. And we've been able to present it anywhere, thanks to the input of Microsoft Teams. So remote working and indeed learning was all key there from a lay-by. So this was essential because we couldn't go into schools. So rather than being stuck at home and not being able to provide anything as resources, we were still able to be out and about in such extreme circumstances. And collaboration was key. And thanks to M365, the information that we were able to discuss within the team could be done live, and any presentation that we had available to present would be edited within a Teams conversation. We would be able to collaborate, add, amend, delete, whatever was appropriate to the potential future audience. And this was all done via the new SharePoint site that we were able to store the information on securely, and indeed the Teams discussions that we had in abundance, and also one-to-one sessions between coordinators and indeed staff members that would be going on to deliver. We'd be able to mentor them and show them the actual new lessons, not face to face, but because of Teams during those discussions. It was absolutely perfect, and this led to knowing that if there was an issue that could be dealt with, it could actually be dealt with on a mobile phone, because our mobile phones currently have the ability to go into SharePoint, go into Microsoft PowerPoint and amend via the new SharePoint services. So that was fantastic for us on the go. And this led, and I'll just quickly divert from the presentation. I'll quickly divert to what our SharePoint site looks like now. This is the offer page that we have, which is a front-facing internal site for Wiltshire Police PCSOs, police officers and police staff to look at. It has all the information about the team. It has the 1-minute guides to all of the interventions that we have going forward in abundance there to read and divulge through, and also our signing and resource information, which we can show to all officers that might be out and about, might be talking to children and young people, and that dreaded quote where they say there's nothing to do. Well, because of our ability to actually store information on SharePoint, we can say, well, here's some events that are going on in your local area. Here are some national or local organizations that you can get in touch with. And also we highlight our intervention events that we have running universally across the force. It's editable, it's easy to understand. Of course, you probably would need to, if it was the first viewing, you'd probably need a little tutorial, but we've been given the ability to actually continuously update to police staff members and PCSOs, PCs, what's going on for children and young people across the force. And these are examples of what we've been delivering. Now, just to go into one intervention package that we have, it's the SWIFT program. That's the Swindon and Wiltshire Intervention for Families to Thrive, and SWIFT is the acronym. And this is the database that we have on our background, running in the background, not being front facing. This is only for our the youth and early intervention team, just to keep tabs on which young person or which child is on the scheme, which has been either refused or is still ongoing. And it's great just to have this database. As an example, we had the senior members of staff ask how many children are on the scheme between 2019 to 2021. All that information has been stored internally, and then we can export the findings via a workbook, which is very simple to understand, very quick to access. And thanks to the NEP program, we've been given the tools to actually collate all this data without any fuss. And also we're able to hide sensitive data such as names, which I've hidden obviously for this presentation, but that is also able to be retrieved back. So we can hide and then show any sort of column at our convenience. So that's an essential tool that we have, and it's a very simple database to create, and we can move these functions around without any problems. For example, there we can move the referred to age across there. It takes time obviously to as you can see, it just took a little bit of time to move about, but it's very simple to use, comparing it to the old system that we had, which is very clunky. It took time and sometimes it wouldn't even work. So the Swift database is working very well.
And now, just quickly, whilst we're talking about this, so this is obviously built on a Microsoft list, which means it's a very flexible tool to be able to work with. But what are the plans for getting partners more involved in accessing the Swift?
Yeah, basically we are in discussions now with Wiltshire Council, with Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Service to actually add more solo intervention packages that young people can get involved with. For example, the fire service have Salamander, which has now been renamed to Spectra. That is a monthly or bi-monthly event that young people can get assigned to. We can then provide that information directly to contacts within the fire service, for example, and they work alongside us to make sure that they're aware of who they're taking on board. So because they would have passed any sort of data sensitive conversations, we'd be able to present that information to them, and we'd be able to, of course, say if there's any issues that they need to be aware of. That information can all be relayed via the database.
That's fantastic. So let's crack on with the rest of the presentation. Yep. But remember, everybody, pop your questions in and we'll put them to Alan as we go through.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, apologies if I do go on about how great it is, but there you go. So going on to collaboration, we also have to be aware of evaluating. You've seen the SharePoint site, as I've just given a quick briefing moment on there, but evidencing success. Basically, in the past, a great example would be we had to rely on other departments within the force to create surveys, to be then sent on to schools. But thanks to Microsoft Forms, we can create those forms. We can then share the links to the schools that are involved with any sort of intervention plan that we have. And as a great example, Junior Good Citizen is one where we do a pre and post survey, where we give young people the chance to answer questions based on personal safety events or issues that concern them in their sort of society, and we do a pre and post survey, and these are the results. Thanks to Microsoft Forms, we've now got a lovely pie chart, a lovely ability to obtain data in graph form. And this is a great example from the most recent Junior Good Citizen event that we hold every summer, asking them specifically what information we need to get from them. So as you can see, we've got a pre-event and a post-event answer. And that information is then snipped from Microsoft Forms to then go into an annual report that is then sent on to external partners that work within the Junior Good Citizen remit. This is a personal safety event we hold every year, but this has made our reporting and our actual documentation very sleek, very professional, and that's all down to Forms. So I can also say that has been an absolute godsend over the last year. Now, as we're all aware, the COVID-19 pandemic did stop a lot of face-to-face interaction, a lot of concerns that we would have that would be dealt with in the classroom on a face-to-face basis we couldn't do, but because of the M365 input, we were able to set instructions on a actual personal safety video that we wanted to create for Junior Good Citizen. We couldn't do it face-to-face, but we were adamant on actually making it, well, on making it a success still for this year. So the instructions I gave out to all the partner agencies was to create something on Teams, a pre-recorded video, either through the usage of PowerPoint or indeed just them speaking. At first they were concerned because they'd never used it before, but thanks to the ability of me being able to create a tutorial video on how to record, how to present, we were able to create a 50-minute personal safety video from a multiple array of partner agencies. There was support needed. If there was ever a concern, we would be able to go on to Teams, have a quick chat, and the finished item was actually then viewed by all the partner agencies in a big Teams conversation. It was like a premiere, nothing like the James Bond one we had last night, but there was something similar where we would look at the actual finished item. If there was any concerns, then we would go back and edit it as we were all talking, and that was fantastic to have. And once that was all done, it then became a piece of media that was then shared with all of our schools across Swindon and Wiltshire, which can be used annually every year if schools don't wish to attend on a face-to-face basis. Of course, we will then review the material annually to see if anything needs to be amended or updated or even deleted, and that now is a piece of media that is stored forever on our cloud. And that would not have happened without the implementation of Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Forms, and even the SharePoint site as well, where we now have that stored in our database. And yeah, all I can really say is thank you very much for allowing us to bring ourselves forward into the 21st century with having such a sleek and just basically a sleek program that we can now use and put forward to our children across Wiltshire and Swindon. So that's everything from me then, Dave. I do appreciate the time, but if anyone's got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
No, that's fantastic. I've got a couple of questions whilst people are putting them forward. So what was the school's reaction to having to use 365, Teams, etc. During the COVID crisis? Obviously, when we were all moving to remote working.
It was quite a worry at first. It was quite a system where we can't have you in, but we know we need your input. Can you help us? So it was basically whatever we can do in regards to going on to showing a presentation. We can record it onto Teams, then edit it as appropriate within the Adobe Premiere Pro software, and then send on. That would obviously have to be assessed and checked by our comms department to make sure all the information was relevant, up to date, but we would not have been able to have done that before. The good news is that because of Teams and because of the ability to record live material, if officers can't attend, or if there is an emergency that they need to attend to, we can still supply them with some form of contingency, that they'll still get that learning, they'll still get that input when they wouldn't have had it before.
And will you continue to use some of the virtual inputs rather than just reverting straight back to going into the classroom, or will it be a hybrid of the two, do you think?
I think, Dave, it will be a hybrid of the two. The ability where if they're not able to travel, and we all know what's been going on with the panic at the pumps, but if they're not able to travel, then they still can indeed do a virtual session with all the students in one area. And that was the danger, I think, initially, where we would have students at home learning. And if we were dealing with a very sensitive topic such as child sexual exploitation, the children wouldn't have had the ability to talk to a teacher there and then. So that was one of the barriers we had to overcome. But with one-to-ones, with teachers and young people having those conversations virtually, we'd still be able to safeguard them to some means. But we all fundamentally, the universal packages that we wanted to deliver, we had to make sure they were all together.
Now, obviously, the Swift database means that the data is in one place. It's not on Excel, etc. Why is it so important with safeguarding to have all the information accessible by everyone at the same time?
It's so if there has been a job that a child has been falling victim to, then basically officers that have been out and about can then report and update as appropriate. They can update the workbook, they can update the accessibility to the Swift database, so that if one person isn't overseeing it, a multiple of officers can do it. Then yeah, we'd be able to make sure it's a rolling and constantly updated piece of work. And yeah, it's working. We know that there's been situations where the child that was about to go into an intervention with an officer, they didn't like that officer, so that was updated quite quickly to say this child or it does not like working with male officers. So then they had to adjust accordingly, and that's what they did. And that was not just one person dealing with, that was a multiple of about 3 or 4 officers. So yeah, it's a live working document, and it's easily accessible, and it's done daily. And so yeah, it's just so valuable, because with the old ways of working, it was definitely very clunky, very inoperable sometimes. And thanks to the new SharePoint, this is something that can be done on the go as well, which is great.
So of course you don't end up with different versions of spreadsheets, etc.
It.
And of course it's all held in our secure police environments as well. So the data isn't being shared beyond those who don't need it, is it, at the end of the day as well? One of the other things, of course, with safeguarding is what's the impact of the interventions you have. Now, I believe you have actually had some disclosures that have led to criminal investigations and results, haven't they?
Yes, if we've still got time, of course, I'll be very brief, but a sexting session that was done virtually a couple of months ago within a school in the southwest, well, in Wiltshire, obviously, after the the sexting awareness lesson was dealt with, a young girl came to the officer and indeed the teacher. They had a one-to-one session, and they discussed. And they showed evidence of what was not appropriate being sent to this young person via an adult via Facebook. They said, "Is this appropriate, sir?" And that immediately got the alarm bells ringing. And thanks to that intervention that went ahead, all the knowledge base that went ahead, that child was able to come forward and not be afraid of it, because the intervention packages that we deliver in school are all accredited to the PSHE Association, so we have to fall within that remit as well. It has to be trauma informed, and the young female that came forward was basically, it was a snowball effect that led to an adult in his late 30s being investigated simply off the back of this one message that he sent her. Then it turned out he wasn't just sending it to her, he was sending it to other children in that school. So thanks to that intervention, that one-off intervention that could have been cancelled or could have been rearranged at any point, we got a potential dangerous offender off the streets. So that was one of our good news stories.
That's fantastic, and that's what it all comes
Absolutely.
up. It's about the safeguarding of people and keeping them safe from harm. We haven't had too many questions through today because obviously we've covered the answers in the presentation, which is always important. I think a couple of important points to remember, of course, is with SharePoint. Don't think of SharePoint as an intranet and as a file management. They're both at the same time. So definite hybrid. And so what Alan's been able to do is to make the working files available to the people who need them, and to be able to edit on the fly and have that information website all in one place. So they're not having to email to ask for a file. They've got access to the latest file that the team have signed off if another member of the team is doing an input. So that's part of the whole beauty of the SharePoint approach. And we have got, as I mentioned in the chat, a SharePoint webinar in a couple of weeks' time where West Yorkshire, who've built a whole new intranet on SharePoint Modern through the 365 platform, are going to be showing. And again, this is exactly what you're empowered in a department to do, to look after its own content, because they know the content best, so make it available to people. We've got no more questions in, so I'm going to start wrapping us up a little bit early. You get a couple of minutes back. But what I will mention, of course, is if you want to know more about what Wiltshire have done, and remember, the example that Alan's given us today could be applied almost anywhere. Think about other areas of safeguarding, MARAC, any area of business, local policing, work around problem solving, having these databases, you might be able to use them for that sort of thing. If you need help with that, on screen now are the engagement team from the NEP with their relevant forces, so you can reach out, get in touch with the team, get help. If you want any more information from Alan, get in touch with the team on screen or the NEP info box through transformation.police.uk, and we'll connect you to the right information, the right solutions to help move it forward, to help you progress. And also, of course, if you just get the right button clicked, in a couple of weeks' time, we've got the SharePoint intranet, but next week's a really important one. We've done quite a bit on Power Apps, Power Automation over the last few weeks, and it's an area of the 365 environment where people are getting really excited and developing things. The Met are going to be on with us next week to share how they manage that environment, to empower their team and enable them to develop ideas, but to prevent duplication, to get people working together with a similar idea, and to maintain the quality. So all the events are always available on the NEP website, transformation.police.uk/events, and you can see them. And if you put /watch, you can rewatch these webinars at any time as we're able to keep the things going. And as I've mentioned many times, we really do need your feedback. If you've got an idea of something you'd like to share about good practice you're rightly proud of, that other forces could learn from, please get in touch with us. If you're inspired to think about how you're doing your business, again, please include that on the survey or let us know in any other way. I don't see any more questions in the chat, so Alan, it's back to me to thank you for sharing with what you've done and the team from Wiltshire today, which fantastic pieces of work, and we've got a couple of your colleagues on who just show how invested you are. And one of the things we've just been chatting around in the chat is about how we can potentially do newsletters on Sway with you to use more of the platform, which means you can embed that content that you talk about into websites and share it on social media. So there's a lot more that we can do with this. So thank you, Alan, for joining us today. Other than that, we hope you can join us next week. We're back at the same time at midday, and thank you for joining us today.